So every product will have an appeal for some people, and how do we figure out the market for that particular product? If you replace the word God with growth, then every religious book would sound like a management textbook. So as a coach, I challenge the assumptions of the people and say, why not?
We have Dinkar Rao, business coach, with us. Welcome, Dinkar.
What is the one sales habit that separates top 10 performers?
Wow, that's a great question. And I've worked with quite a few bright sales folks over the last 20 years in my career. Apart from the people who I would say performance, who are the people who have the higher probability to sustainably perform? I would put that question in a slightly different perspective, with your permission. The sales people who don't consider number as a great achievement, but they understand what did I learn from it and what are the mistakes I did, even though I learned something, or even though I won the deal, what are the mistakes I did. So all this happens when you are grounded. Apart from that, one good quality which salespeople have who perform consistently are they plan ahead, including their daily routine. They are the people who know where is the hole in the pipeline. Salespeople who are constantly performing can look at their pipeline and say, this is the risk. So some of the salespeople with whom I've worked and tried to enable them, they are good in finding the bad news well in advance, not just the good news. Okay. So the bravado of, yes, we have to achieve, there, which is critical. The brute force is necessary to win the war, as they say. But then you also are a very good risk manager. You know where the things will not move. You are critically analyzing the risks in the pipeline, the business, and also you are able to see what is changing in the landscape where you are operating. These are some of the qualities. If I give you very, very, very basic examples, I've seen salespeople who get up early in the morning are by and large very predictable. Okay. They are not late for the meetings. They have a huge amount of time available.
Should they be self-motivated?
Absolutely. I think self-motivation is critical.
Should they concentrate on their diet and nutrition?
Absolutely. The wellness is critical because in every business you have, it's sinusoidal. So it gives you the...
sleep and lifestyle?
Yeah, absolutely. Sleep and lifestyle is critical. And if you have to work for a career for many years and you're using your faculties which you are gifted with, you have to really take care of them.
Does Kabir Learning Foundation help them in these matters as well?
Absolutely. I think what Kabir tries to do is work on the plane of wisdom. And everybody who is born as a human, I believe that they want to be successful and they have wisdom, native wisdom from all the accumulation they have from the past. So I think what Kabir does is to ground people, show them the transient nature of business. So in fact, I was discussing the same thing with one of the journalists last month. And if you replace the word God with growth, then every religious book would sound like a management textbook. So whatever they are telling you is actually wellness, take care of your customers. And you replace customers with God. You take care of yourself so that you can get devoted. So it's a very interesting parallels we can draw when we have to lead our lives in a grounded manner to be able to do justice to our stakeholders in the system, family, ourselves. Yeah.
Metrics or mindset?
Which do you think drives performance more?
Metric is on the plane of reality. What can be measured is metric. So what can be measured? Sales conversions, for example, number of proposals we have submitted, how many proposals got converted, how many key accounts, what is the wallet share in key accounts, what is the revenue growth, how many channel partners we are able to add, what is the market share percentage, what is the CAGR year on year. Everything is metric. Everything what needs to be measured is metric. And there's also very Western thought at the same time, which is that anything which can be measured can be improved. But then there is a difficulty when we only get stuck with metric. In sales, I can say, or also in leadership development, people who are able to perform are not those who just read the metric and chase the numbers and only go by that. There is something which is happening on, let's say, call it Y plane, which is imaginary plane, where people are dreaming, the people who can imagine what goes beyond metric and how do we work much more creatively to understand how to shape the metric. So they become the shapers of metric rather than the chasers of metric. And these people I call as people who are working on the I-axis, which is imaginary axis. And I think X-axis is the real axis, which is important to be measured. But I think what we cannot measure is also equally important.
But is that behavior something repeatable? Are those heroic or entrepreneurial mindset people? Can you reproduce their qualities in others?
I don't think we should worry about that. I think organization requires people of all sorts. So there might be some people who can dream and take the organization to the next level by what I call it as Y-axis thinking. That's where the Euler's theorem, where we connect the real numbers and imaginary numbers with some universal constant. The whole idea is how do we connect the real numbers and the imaginary numbers.
Okay.
So that's where we may not expect everyone to take ownership of imagination. I think there should be some people who take the ownership of imagining something different. Typically the guys who are movers and shakers in the organization are also, I've started now believing that people who are even at the junior most level of the ladder also need to have Y-axis thinking. An example of Y-axis thinking.
Yes, please.
We were working for a southern real estate organization. I can't take the name of the place as well as the company, but then was working with a very good captain and we were kind of challenging ourselves and what are the assumptions we have to reverse. So in India there are certain periods where you should not buy houses. People believe that we should not buy houses during that period. So the Y-axis thinking, we started thinking if we have to motivate some set of people who don't believe in that to come for the site visit, what kind of a campaign we should run, marketing campaign to attract those prospects who don't believe that there is always a fixed period in a year where you should buy. So see the whole problem change from being a victim of a situation where you will say, okay, August we can't sell or Jan we can't sell, to a situation where say, what kind of a people we can sell. And this is what I call it as Y-axis thinking, where you don't go just by say metric, but say, okay, we have to achieve it. Looks like it's a challenge this month because of the factors which are beyond our control. But then how each and every person in the organization can become creative. And that Y-axis thinking may not be uniform, but I think it can be inspired. So
Do you help get that creativity out?
As a neutral enabler, what I constantly do is to ask people to challenge their assumptions. That why do you think it won't happen? For example, why do you think people will not buy a particular house with a particular vastu? If that is the case, then not a single building, not a single house of that shape should be sold. Then why it works for some people? So we are not challenging the beliefs of the society, but we are saying that there is a subset which believes in a different way, and how do we reach out to them? So every product will have an appeal for some people, and how do we figure out the market for that particular product? So as a coach, I challenge the assumptions of the people and say, why not?
So you help them challenge the assumptions for themselves as well.
Absolutely. Their own belief. For example, I remember one of the persons said in a SaaS organization that, okay, we should not work with a particular segment. It has been a very cost sensitive segment. And incidentally that the company was based out of Malaysia, and then, repeatedly we were seeing that the companies which are in that particular segment were inquiring more and more to have their digital transformation services, DT services. And the folks here were saying that, oh, let's not go there because, every time we give a quote, there is a question of debate, price sensitivity. Why to get into all that? Then we figured out, okay, how do we deal with this situation rather than assuming that this is a segment specific behavior. So metric thinking doesn't give you all these options. Metric thinking says you have a number to chase, you have to get it. And you are forced to think that that's the plane on which you have to operate. But the other plane is that, maybe a one day activity can change the whole balance sheet of the organization. So what is that one quantum possibility on which we have to work and which can substantially change? That's the answer.